Exclusive insights, actionable strategies, and ideas that ignite change. You're listening to the Ivey Impact Podcast from Ivey Business School.
Hello and welcome to Dialogue with the Dean, the inaugural series on the Ivey Impact Podcast. I'm Julian Birkinshaw, Dean of the Ivey Business School, and in this series I sit down with Ivey's leading faculty to explore their latest research and tackle the pressing issues shaping business and society. On today's episode, we're exploring a force reshaping industries at an unprecedented pace: artificial intelligence. Often viewed as a tool of efficiency, AI is proving to be much more, redefining the way businesses operate, innovate, and compete. Imagine, for example, being able to predict consumer demand with precision or refine your pricing and marketing strategies based on AI-driven insights. This is no longer just a possibility, it's happening right now. And to unpack this, I'm joined by Fredrik Ødegaard, Associate Professor of Management Science at Ivey. His latest research, co-authored with Joshua Foster, introduces a groundbreaking AI-driven approach to demand estimation that could redefine how businesses forecast and optimize sales. Fredrik, welcome to Dialogue with the Dean. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for nailing the last name, the pronunciation. That's
You're
great.
most welcome.
Yeah.
I spent a couple of years in Sweden, so I guess that helps a little bit.
Look,
You've had a long career, both in academia, but also a little bit in business. Just give a sense of your background, how you ended up here working on artificial intelligence.
Okay, so I've always, been mathematically inclined, and my area of management science is mathematical modeling of business problems, or could also be technological problems. And so there's a natural connection between AI and mathematical modeling, because in the end, AI is basically, that's all it is mathematical modeling of various scenarios.
And you also worked a little bit as a business practitioner, actually working in what, supply chain was it, or operations, or?
Correct. So after my master's, I did my master's degrees in operational research and a master's degree in statistics, and then I was working for a supply chain software planning tool called i2 Technologies at the time. So we were providing software for decision making of the largest firms like Nokia and Siemens and Volvo and so on. And then from there, I worked for a /think tank /consulting firm /research place called Institute of Applied Economics. Okay. And then that's when I then decided I want to pursue a more research-based career, and that's when I then entered my PhD studies.
So before we get into your research, AI is everywhere. I mean, you can't pick up a newspaper today without reading about the latest innovation. And we perhaps will pick up on some of those specific recent things at the end. But why has AI taken off over the last 5 years or so?
So I think, one aspect of this is, of course, the marketing of the latest buzzwords, right? And so we've gone in a chain. So AI was a buzzword, I'm going to say like maybe 20 some years ago. And then we went into the buzzword was like big data. Right. And then there was buzzwords around maybe machine learning, and then all these types of learnings, and then analytics. And now there's like a renaissance on the term AI, I would say, right? Yeah. So it's not really that all of a sudden it's always been around. And in fact, AI as a concept has been around for like decades and decades, like 50 years plus years. So what has happened in the most recent years with the boom of Gen AI is that we now have these tools that not only do, so we used to have like technology tools such as thermostats or self-driving cars and so on. But now we have AI also on like all the searches and the pricing and these online tools such as then, ChatGPT and Copilot and so on. And so that has then had a boom, I think.
Right. And this Gen AI, obviously generative AI, means it's actually kind of giving you literally text. I mean, we're all experiencing this, whereas before it was a little bit behind the scenes, it was perhaps working in the background. I guess it's the visibility around Gen AI, which means it's become part of the parlance.
Exactly. I mean, maybe one of the, I don't think this has happened in the last 5 years, but over the last couple of maybe 20 years is, of course, the computing power has increased enormously, and the data that's been collected has just, mushroomed crazy. Yeah. And so you need a lot of data and you need a lot of computing power in order to actually for these tools to work. So if you go back, like these large language models, that is the engine of Gen AI, which is based on these neural networks. I mean, those ideas have existed since the 70s. But when I was in grad school in the 90s, we'd use neural networks to solve small little toy problems because the computing power wasn't there and the data wasn't there, and they were completely useless. And I must say, it's amazing that the people who were pushing that research frontier had such belief in the potential for it, because what they were doing at the time wasn't that amazing, right? So you could only solve small little toy problems at the time. But it's quite impressive that they had the tenacity. This has the potential. And then as soon as we had the technology and the data, now it's these amazing applications.
Right. So this is, I guess, there's been computer scientists working on AI for, as you say, for decades. Suddenly, the amount of processing power and the amount of data available to train these models allows for this sort of inflection point, if you like, whereby we suddenly see the exponential increase in the quality of what can be done.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, that's exactly it.
Excellent. Yeah, and of course it's not going to stop. I mean, everyone tells me that, the AI we're working with today is going to be look quite primitive 5 years from now. We're going to dive into a paper that you've written. It's called Giving Deep Attention to Consumer Preferences with Large Language Models. That's the one with Joshua Foster, our colleague. You're going to have to just take us through this in a really basic way. So what is the sort of the business problem you're trying to solve?
Okay.
And what does the AI then help us to do, which we couldn't do before?
Right. So what we're trying to figure out is from a description, from a pure text description, can you infer what value that customers or consumers have associated with that? Right. So in economics, we have something called hedonic pricing. So if you have a product like a house or a car or something, or a piece of maybe software that's built up of different components, then you can maybe provide some attribute on all those components of what is it worth to the consumer. So when I bundle all those stuff together, I create a car, or I create a house, or create a piece of software. Together, that gives me this value. And historically, when we do hedonic pricing, you have to pre-specify what are the different components that give a specific value that builds up. So if we take a car, you might say, okay, if you tell me the make, the model, the miles, the year, the type of transmission, so maybe I'll ask for 5 attributes, then I can say, okay, then here's what that one is worth in the consumer market. So what we wanting to see is, well, that's great. So if you're an expert and you're a car expert, then you might be able to define those 5 components. But what we wanted to see is, well, what if you just provide the description? How do consumers actually react to a pure text description on the internet? So if you have if you go to buy a car and you test drive a car, perhaps all those attributes somehow manifest themselves. Oh yeah, this car feels nice. I like the way this door locks, and I like the shift. I like the seat and all this. So you can experience that. But more and more we're buying things online, and I have to rely on the text, and that text sort of generates value. Yep. And so what the large language models now can do is, okay, I'm just going to analyze the text. I'm not going to pre-specify, what's really important is what the make, the model, and the transmission type is. And then I'm just going to train and see, if I look here's some transactional data and we used auction data. Can you figure out what is a car worth? That is what these machines can do.
So I think I understand, but let me just check. So I might think that a BMW car has a particular kind of intrinsic value that's greater than a Ford. Yeah. And I might think that having some sort of turbocharger makes it more valuable. Perfect. And a sunroof makes it more valuable. And that's my kind of intuition. Yeah. But you're saying that may or may not actually be correct. And if we're trying to get to a more accurate pricing, AI can help us to essentially go through thousands, tens of thousands of examples of complex, multifaceted products like cars. Look at the prices that were actually charged for them, and help you to almost link the attributes of the car to the differences in prices.
And not only just the attributes, but the way it was described. So you might have 2 identical BMWs up for sale, and one just has a very sparse or technical description, BMW 2.3, whatever, and so on. And then the other one has some sort of nice prose and explaining, when you close the door, it goes so smoothly. And that might generate value. Right. And so you can see, how does the text description actually influence the consumer value? And that's what these large language models actually can terse out.
So in terms of practical applications, I mean, staying with a specific example, let's say of car auctions. So you are a car auction house. You might want to get hold of Fredrik and Joshua's research, because it essentially helps you to more accurately predict what someone's going to pay. Is it as simple as that?
Well, that would be one application. So one application might be if you as an auction house are the one who actually take in the vehicles, and then you type up the descriptions and so on. The one we have access to it's a platform where we trained our data from. It's a public platform similar to eBay. It's called bringyourtrailer.com. Right. And so if you want to sell your car, you load up some pictures, you load up and you create your description. And so what this research then can show you is, okay, I can then, suppose I'm thinking about making a description, I can, test out that description, feed it into our model, say, okay, here's the distribution of what you can expect to get for your car. And then you can okay, what if I write it like this? And then say, okay, then here it will actually shift what the demand will look like. So.
Wow. How widely can this approach be used? I mean, there must be applications in many other industries as well. Can you, perhaps you've done research on this, perhaps you're just speculating, but give us a sense of where else we can use this.
Yeah, no, so I mean, both me and Joshua feel real estate market would be another aspect of it. I think from my background in revenue management, the airline industry and the hotel industry and car rental industry, places where you have, different components to it. So it's not sort of homogeneous, like loaf of bread, for instance, right? But you need something that sort of builds up, that there's different attributes with it, and that the description help. Now, of course, maybe you can say, this sesame seeded poppy seed bagel with a special yeast. Maybe when you describe that one, but that's not the main application.
No, but frankly, cars, holidays, houses. I mean, these are huge markets, in themselves. So there's plenty of ways we can use this. So we're ultimately trying to help business people make better choices about how can we sort of think through the consequences of this, because yes, we want to understand the pricing better.
Yeah.
But if you're running a real estate agency or whatever, how does this help me to run my agency better?
Well, so there's two components. That one is just to understand what is it that actually drives the demand or the value of the product or service that I'm providing. So can I actually terse that out and understand, this is quite fascinating. That's what, these large language models, but the ones that we have provided does. It can then pick out the specific contribution for these words in a particular sequence. So that's one thing, that how does the value of a product service get derived? And then on top of that, then, okay, here now, suppose I would like to introduce a new product and service. Can I get some sense for what is it going to generate? Well, if I explain it like this and I feed this into the market, then I have now an idea.
So both the people buying and selling cars benefit and houses benefit.
Yeah.
But as you say, you go back to the BMW itself.
Yeah.
In terms of which of their features do users actually value.
Exactly.
Right? And so perhaps they don't value the sunroof or the turbocharger, but they do value the beautiful styling. I mean, I'm making that up.
That's right.
But the point is that this is giving insights into consumer preferences.
Yeah.
Therefore, that feeds through into essentially designing products to be more effective.
Exactly.
More valuable in the eyes of consumers.
Yeah, that's
wonderful. Okay, so let's move from the specific work that you've done to a slightly broader conversation, because we started by acknowledging that the world of generative AI is, with ChatGPT and so forth, is upon us. I mean, what you just described to me was what I would always call predictive AI. We're trying to predict prices better.
That's right.
And predictive AI is not exactly the same as generative AI. What How for just for a student at Ivey,
Yeah.
how would you describe the difference between these two?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. I think most people, when they associate the term AI, they do think in the modern era now, they think about predictive analytics or forecasting models and that, so on.
Right.
But then from a management science perspective, or my background of, that's just one component of analytics. The bigger one is what we call optimization, sometimes called prescriptive analytics, in like, okay, or strategic analytics. What do I now do given that I have this forecast? So there's a whole world beyond just forecasting and predicting. Yeah. I mean, the generative AI, the new component there is, it's that you're using these forecasting tools not just to forecast predefined variables and numbers, but actually to forecast what word fits best here, right? And so I think that's an amazing sort of creativity to think that I'm going to use these tools where I was able to predict a specific variable that's been predefined to actually predict, okay, what should the best response be to this query, and how can I articulate some sort of a sonnet or a description of something, that's not numerical, right? So.
No, indeed, and I think most of us are absolutely astounded by essentially the creativity of generative AI, its ability to come up with things that we would not have thought of. I personally use it when I'm kind of brainstorming. I'm trying to figure out, what are all the different ways of thinking about something.
Yeah.
I can think of 3 or 4 things immediately.
Yeah.
And I ask ChatGPT and it gives me another 5.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, it's not being genuinely creative because it is by definition trained on a universe of data that's out there.
Yeah.
But it's being creative, meaning that it's helping us to think of things that we as individuals.
Yeah, sure. But that's one way, and I think the creative aspect is the following. So if you posted a query or a question, and then it has a set of, okay, the combination of words or the combination of responses to this particular one, I can draw from all these different buckets. And then, okay, I'm not always just going to choose the one that's the highest or on average is the best. I'm going to sort of randomize. I'm going to roll this dice. And then I got these 10 buckets. So I roll this 10-sided dice. And then I happen to pick that response, right? And so the creativity is that I'm sort of randomly generating responses based on that. And that's where we then come into this whole thing about hallucination, because sometimes you get a response, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it's just it happened to roll a 1, and it took from bucket 1, and bucket 1 had this, didn't really fit in the context that you were making it, but it fitted in another context, right? So,
no, it is. I mean, that has always intrigued me. You can ask the same question, exactly the same question, to the same ChatGPT, and it will not give you the same answer.
No, that's right.
It'll give you roughly the same answer, but it's going to use different words, which is, by the way, kind of fascinating, because it's one of the reasons why we as faculty at a business school get nervous, because we can't prove when our students are using AI, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay, sometimes there's a smoking gun, I would say.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it's not, because you do know your students. And so when I do read the student's report, I'm like, this is not Tom. I can tell you that. I don't know who it is, but it's not Tom who has this. He doesn't have that sort of style, right? So.
No, I think you're spot on. You can just tell that sort of AI style, and yet proving definitively that they've done that, of course, is impossible.
Yeah.
So let's just go a little bit deeper into the implications of AI for teaching and learning, because as faculty at a business school, we're training the next generation of students in what's important to them as business people. We know that they're using ChatGPT and Anthropic and other such models. And I'm personally comfortable with that. I think it's impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. Once these technologies exist, it's like having a pocket calculator. They will be used. So the question then becomes, given that the students are going to be using them, what is it that we're actually teaching them? I mean, what is it that an Ivey graduate coming out of here in a couple of years' time has that we can absolutely definitively say we've helped them to be more successful as leaders of the future? What are we teaching them now?
I think that's exactly right. I think we really need to reassess what is the core skills that we want them, right? And I think when we think about that, it is, it's stuff like critical thinking, it's articulation, it's being able to frame a a strategy around something. And so I think we have to then go back. It's actually, I think with this AI, it's going to go back more to basics. So understanding fundamental marketing topics, fundamental finance, fundamental accounting, fundamental operations, fundamental analytics, and so on. And then AI is just a tool to do that. Right. And so I think we have to then think about what is it a business student should know. Now, roughly at our school, we have, I would say, 1/4 at the undergraduate space. We have 1/4 going into accounting, 1/4 going into consulting, 1/4 going into finance, and then 1/4 going into sort of general things. And so in those streams, there are then some, specific tangible skills that the companies that come to recruit our students are looking for that they should understand, like how to read a balance sheet and how to understand a financial statement and so on. And so those skills, we then have to figure out, okay, here is what we want to do. And now how can this AI tool help us deliver that? And right?
Yeah, it's... I've discussed this with many people, not just yourself, but we always come back to this question of what are those sort of uniquely human things that AI can't do, certainly not today, that employers value.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on a couple. We talked a little bit about genuine creativity, genuine out-of-the-box creativity. We talked a little bit about critical thinking and sort of judgment. For me, why do people hire Ivy's graduates? They hire them because they've got that capacity to make decisions under great deals of uncertainty, right?
That's right. And the environment we put them in the case-based method in the classroom is you have to think on, respond quickly. You have to articulate your thoughts, your arguments, and so on. Those skills are very impressive, like just making a presentation, like when we have case competitions and so on. Our students are, it's really impressive, actually.
That's right. Yeah, and you touched on case method. Absolutely. The case method, in some ways, is even more important now in an era of AI because, lecturing to students about concepts is something that they can get online for free. Having a dialogue in the classroom builds those critical thinking skills. Right. It builds their relational skills, the ability to kind of make an argument, the ability to challenge. Yeah. This is what our employers want. So there's much more we could discuss. We haven't even talked about issues of privacy, issues of kind of computers taking over the world. That, in my view, is the world of science fiction. Yeah. But it's a conversation in its own right. Yeah. But let's summarize and wrap up. So if listeners wanted to take just one key insight from the conversation, particularly about your own research, what should it be?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is just stimulate that creativity on what are the applications of Gen AI and to think outside the box that, I can ask it, to produce a song in the style of Bob Dylan on this topic, or I can ask it to give me a recipe on something, but come up with new and creative business applications. And we are one of the first to actually do it on how can I have it generate the underlying consumer demand for products and services. Yeah. And so to sort of think outside the box of what is it I can actually use these Gen AI tools to do? What is it that I can do with text? Right. And so that would be the sort of key takeaway.
Perfect.
Just try to think outside the box.
We've got these beautiful new models, albeit most of us don't understand what's actually happening. Yeah. And it's up to us to be creative about coming up with new applications.
That's right.
That's right.
In the same way that, when electricity first came, the first application was, generating light. Right. And then all of a sudden we had, ironing and with dishwashers and microwaves and all that stuff, right? And quite amazing. Yeah. Right? So.
No, it does fascinate me that at the moment we're using AI to kind of do better things that we've already been doing. Yeah. And you're right. What we now need to do is figure out ways of doing, things completely differently that we wouldn't have imagined even possible.
That's right.
Good. Yeah. You've been listening to Dialogue with the Dean from Ivey Business School. A big thank you to my guest, Fredrik Ødegaard, Associate Professor of Management Science, for sharing his time and fresh research with us today. And of course, thank you for tuning in. On our next episode, I'll be joined by Hubert Punn, Professor of Management Science, to discuss another digital force shaping the future of global business, blockchain. We'll explore its potential, its role in modern industries, and why Canada must take the lead in this evolving space. Don't miss it. Until next time, goodbye.
This was Dialogue with the Dean, an Ivey Impact Podcast series. For more insights from Ivey, including thought leadership on critical issues and additional podcast episodes, visit ivyimpact.ca or subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thanks for tuning in.